Get this started again. Okay, we're all good. All right, well, Dallas, okay, yeah, welcome to Unedited Space. So let's jump in now and we'll have our chat. And as I said, it's pretty much good to go on whatever you like to talk about. It's life on planet Earth. The overall objective is just to try and raise the conversation level on
Mhm.
this planet to match what's actually happening. Because at the moment, what we talk about and the nature of how we talk about it, how open and honest we are, is just so far off the mark to the problems that we're creating. And that's half the reason that we do have problems, is because we just don't talk openly and honestly with each other.
Mhm.
So the whole idea of this is just to try and loosen things up a bit, get people thinking, talking more, breaking down all those fears and insecurities that hold us back, and trying to step out with a little bit more honesty about what we are as humans and what's going on the planet and that kind of stuff. So to get it started, just tell us a little bit more about you again, because this, separate from the Adelaide
Well,
Festival
my name is
welcoming.
Dallas. I'm 30 years old. I come from a little city called Battle Creek, Michigan, just west of Detroit, in the heart of the Rust Belt. And I now live in Melbourne, Australia. Just moved out here. Spent most of my life tour managing punk rock bands and just being I don't know, just absolutely terrible alcoholic. Just eating complete shit and being a lazy, lethargic sack of crap. And at a certain point, just decided to kind of you know, to go vegan, to get sober, to get just really my life together, and try to, be really open about some of the problems that I've had, with alcoholism and with depression and with winding up on, suicide watch in a psychiatric hospital and whatnot, and showing that it is, very possible to overcome those sort of things. And I think it's pretty easy to live a pretty amazing, simple life filled with good, clean fun that doesn't have to involve the murder and exploitation and rape of any sort of animals or anything. And that's, I guess, why I'm heading out to Adelaide.
So
Just kind of
so
share experiences.
so Dallas, with you, what sort of took you from someone that, I don't know, I guess wasn't respecting yourself or life in a sense, to being aware of, like, what was there something in particular that created a shift for you to start thinking more about who you are or what you are and the effect of your life on the planet? And
It's absolutely it's the punk rock world. I feel very fortunate. Sometime around middle school, I guess, started skateboarding and getting into punk rock music, and
yeah,
within that, you do see a lot of the self-destructive sort of behavior within that, but there's also the backlash. So while I don't know, Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue are talking about banging strippers and doing coke, you start seeing bands like Minor Threat or Henry Rollins of Black Flag and stuff, where they were talking about getting them mentally strong and living clean and doing a much more positive sort of things. So with me, I guess it went one thing at a time. I remember going to a local concert when I was about 14, and a guitar player having on his guitar just said, "Animals are not ours to eat, wear, or experiment on." And that just resonated with me. And I remember I went vegetarian. That was 14 years ago. I was 16 years old, and it really just cannonballed from there. Because when I went vegetarian, it was like I had never had a salad before. I didn't eat vegetables. I'm just a white trash kid from the Rust Belt. Like, I just knew that I was opposed to murdering animals, and it really just cannonballed towards learning more about better foods, and eventually going vegan, and eventually trying to control my booze. But that was not that productive at first. Took a while, but it was just a cannonball of trying to get my life a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better, and then over a long period of time you can make your life pretty workable. But I think ultimately all of it comes down from a lot of the ideas that I got from within the punk rock world.
yeah, right. So why do you think you'd gone downhill in the first place before you kind of, I don't know, I guess, looked to the world that you're in to be woken up a little bit? Like, what was it about life that was sent you off track, where you weren't feeling good, or whatever the case may be, however you're experiencing it?
Well,
What was that going on in your mind?
I've struggled with a lot of mental health things since I was very young. Even when I
Yeah.
was 11 years old, 12 years old, I wound up in kind of runaway homes and
Mm.
psychiatric hospitals, and they would give me Paxil, Wellbutrin, Depakote, Invega, all sorts of these various drugs. You're just trying to throw drugs at me to solve some of these animosities that I had, and I knew that that was bullshit. I felt that the healthcare industry, the medical industry, especially in the United States, it's a fucking joke. And I was, I was very fortunate that, I kind of wound up. I always, grew up on, hard rock and heavy metal, and I got really into the punk rock scene, and
Yeah.
that kind of gave me a sense of community, and a sense of acceptance, because there were some other weirdos, and they were want to do the same stuff, and but I think just with where I come from, it's so normal for standard procedure is you maybe get out of high school, you get a job at an auto factory or something, you knock somebody up at about 19, you're divorced with two kids by about 23, and then you get on your blood pressure meds at some point in your 30s, and then you die of heart attack or cancer sometime in your 50s. It's grandpa died of colon cancer. Grandma died of colon cancer. Grandpa's diabetic and died of cancer. Like every single person, my cousin's diabetic. Dad's on blood pressure meds in his 30s. It's just we don't know anything else. There's such a huge disconnect,
Yeah.
within especially the working class and then the very poor blue collar communities, and that was all I knew. But fortunately, from playing in punk rock bands and whatnot, I started going on tour. I started gigging out. I was 15, but I started really touring. I was 19 years old, and that took me to these places where I started seeing how people live in other places.
Yeah.
And I realized that I don't have to accept the status quo of where I come from. I can learn a lot of valuable lessons from there, and I still do. It'll always be home, but I can apply that and then mix it with some other things as well. And I guess I'm very fortunate to have wound up, in a world where I've had the opportunity to travel all around. I mean, I live in Australia now, and I certainly didn't start here. And nobody else on my street, definitely, they do not live in Australia.
Right.
They
All right.
never
So
left.
you actually, where do you live in Melbourne?
I live in Thornbury, so
Right.
north burbs of Melbourne.
Yep.
I just moved here. I was on tour all summer with. I work for a tour manager band from Toronto called Penske File, and after that, I tour managed this band from Montreal called Lost Love. So I spent about 3 months on tour across North America this summer. And then just kind of took my sweet time. Went to San Fran for a week, Hawaii for a week, then came out here. I was in New Zealand last weekend for 4 days, giving a talk at a Veg Fest out there in Christchurch. It went over really well. And now I'm just kind of living normal life in Melbourne.
Yeah. So your journey is far from typical, obviously. So I guess what I'd like to understand on a deeper level is you've gone from feeling miserable and depressed, and sometimes I wonder with people how much that is just a person, particularly in light of where you've ended up, right, in a more aware place. Do you think sometimes people end up going off track and getting depressed and miserable because they're in some ways maybe feeling the truth of the world? The world is in a mess, and it's sort
Mm-hmm.
of fabricated with a whole bunch of well manufactured lies, basically,
Right.
and the truth is always hidden. And sometimes I feel like the people that go off the rails the most are sometimes the people closest to the truth,
Yeah.
rather than the ones that are messed up and need help so we can get them back in the system. It's almost like it's the opposite. Those that are not coping with the system are sometimes, to me, the ones that are on a better track without knowing it. I'm not saying it's okay that they feel miserable and all that kind of thing, but I think it comes from a resistance to what is. And I think what is really where the sickness lies is in the masses rather than the individuals that can't handle it. Just
It
wondering how you
is.
see it from that point of view.
Oh, I agree. It would be so easy to just drive my car to McDonald's and go to my 9 to 5 and then come home and watch, fucking American Idol or whatever. Australian Idol is probably a thing here. I don't know. I just got here. So it would be so simple to not have to think about anything.
Yeah,
But that's not how my mind works. Like I've always questioned everything. And yeah, I think that a lot of time, like drug abuse, for example, is just a way of trying to silence everything running on in your head. Absolutely. For me, it totally was.
yeah,
Um, but I guess over time, I guess I found better ways to get busy, and I think that a sober mind is a very powerful weapon. And my life has improved drastically since since getting sober, but also really just taking care of my body and eating real food and getting sleep. And I used to own a bunch of things, but I think they really just owned me. And I think that yeah, it is tricky because I think that yeah, the world is there's so much just terrible bullshit out there, but you can't let that drag you down. You just have to live your life to the best of your ability and try to make something more positive than how you found it.
So,
Like I'm not. fix everything, but I might be able to make it a little bit less fucked up.
So in your life then, right? Because you can either like just pull out and think, okay, I'm personally not going to partake in it, but not necessarily say anything. What compels you to feel the need to, I don't know, be part of the process of educating others and to help them and to give them an inspiration, perhaps to think more or to look beyond the obvious? Like, why have you taken that upon yourself to take that extra step?
Well, okay. Well, everything with me always comes down to punk rock lyrics. So let's go. Chuck Ragan from Hot Water Music has a song called California Burritos. And his line is, I can't stand standing for nothing when standing is all I know. And I
Yeah,
think that really resonates, like well, what else am I going to do? I'm here, so I might as well make the most of the situation.
yeah,
And I find the best way to do that, with me, it used to be I would get preachy and be an asshole and turn people off. And that was not an effective means of getting any sort of, point across, regardless of what you're evangelizing.
hmm
But I think the idea of just trying to live a phenomenal life that's admirable, that people think, hey, that's a really cool, like that guy's onto something. For me, that's been much more productive on trying to promote positivity, but also it just makes my life better. I sleep great at night knowing that I'm doing what I can to try to make everything a better place,
yeah.
and help people out.
Do you
In the
find that's
process,
one of the keys to staying sane is to, react to the truth of what is? Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people say, look at the truth, and they get sort of sad and depressed about it. They might even, stop partaking in, some of the behaviors that either lead to cruelty or destruction of the environment or whatever, but
Mhm.
then they don't do anything about it. And I find people that don't act on it like you are often are the ones that end up being miserable from what they see because they're not doing anything,
Well,
in
they're not
response to
living in
what they
line with
see.
their ethics.
What's
You
that?
know, I said they're not living in line with their ethics,
That's right. Yeah.
and that's a shame, and nobody bats 1,000, which I guess that analogy doesn't work here because it's a baseball reference, but
Right.
uh, nobody's perfect all the time.
Yeah.
But the idea is to try to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. And again, always for me, it always comes down to lyrics. And like my favorite line, my mantra, comes from a Weaker Than song, where because people all the time they say like, well, how are you doing? If they know I went through some, psychiatric problems and whatnot, and I'm not going to say great, or I'm not going to say, oh, everything's good or whatever, because sometimes it isn't. But I will say I'm so much better than I used to be. I think that's what they're really asking. It's not me versus anybody else. It's not me, I understand I will never find perfection, but I can say that I am so much better than I used to be. And that's what really matters. And I hope that tomorrow or, whatever years from now, I can just keep saying the same thing. Just keep moving more and more towards, towards the goal of perfection I'm never going to reach.
So what is that journey, do you reckon, that you're on? Because let's just say, if I simplify it, there's two observations I see on
Mm-hmm.
this planet, and one, we can either go on a sort of a narrow inward journey where, because I think all kids start kind of expansive, and creative and desires, and they're looking at the world, and then slowly but surely their thinking gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And then, for whatever reason, it's all about specializing and focusing, and which puts us in a very small place of thought. And then, I can look at friends in my life or people I've known who I got on really well as kids and watch their lives progress and watch their lives sort of end up in a tight little box. And none of them looked particularly happy in that little box either. They were far freer and more alive when I knew them as at school. Um, and so to me, there's that, or there's the other alternative, which is more what you're representing, and that's an expansive journey where you're constantly opening the parameters of who and what you are and what you can be. Like from your observation, what is it that's led you on an expansive one? And what, like in terms of I know you've shared the essence of what got you triggered, but what is it, do you really think, that's making that difference? Because obviously we all need to expand if we're going to face the truth of everything on this planet. Why do you think so many people are stuck more in the inward thinking one, the narrow thinking pathway? What do you think it is that's got them more? Because in the main, that's where they're trapped, right? So why do you think so many human beings are sort of refusing to do what you're doing, and that's to open up and face a bigger truth?
I think it's just easier. That's, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't, I personally, I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to be happy with the status quo for anything in my entire life.
yeah,
But, but it's just simple, like um, like I think my life is pretty awesome, but it's fucking exhausting sometimes too. It's
Yeah.
since May 17th, I was on the road nonstop, and then over that time it was like 15,000 driven miles. I think I did 14 flights, 39 American states, a couple provinces, and then a couple extra countries. And it's like, and there's always that grass is greener sort of thing too, where it's like, while I'm living in a van with a bunch of French Canadian guys, watching them get fucked up till 3 in the morning, and then driving them around and having to be, I'm the tour manager. Sometimes I'm thinking like, man, I kind of wish I had like a job and a girlfriend, but I think as soon as I, have that sort of thing, I still have that drive to go do, something else. I don't know. I don't think there's a clear cut answer on this. I think that, people, you're right. When people are young, they're curious, and they're really curious, and they ask a lot of questions, and they want to know why everything is, and then it just gets beaten out of them.
Yeah.
Society just beats it out of them.
Yeah.
And teaches you it's so much easier to just accept the status quo and just do whatever bullshit. I don't know. I haven't been able to do that, and I'm hoping I can help some other people break out of their shell a little bit and try to do something else too. But even within my own life, I certainly, let's say when I was just a raging alcoholic, trying to sedate, these thoughts, with booze, constantly, I feel that like, that was a full-time job. Like being an alcoholic was an absolute full-time job. And there's no way that I would have wound up in Australia, I think, when I was just busy being drunk, not in my hometown, but not that far from there either. And I would, travel or whatever a bit, but for the most part, it's still, working a job and having the same girlfriend, and
Yeah.
just my life just being based around, consuming a drug and trying to sedate myself just to keep those fucking voices in my head quiet a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, I don't have any good answer, I guess.
So where are you at now with all that then? Like, obviously you've cleaned your life up and you're living
Mhm.
a more expansive life. You're doing something productive in response to the nature of the world. How does that leave you, like, in terms of, stress, anxiety, depression, or whatever? Is that fully gone, or you just get it occasionally, or like, where do you sit now with your life in that regard?
When I reflect, I get really happy, and that's a good thing. They're right here. Bam. This is my phone, and I document everything now because I
Yeah.
spent years and years, doing these travels and stuff, which were cool, but I was just always blackout drunk. I don't remember anything, So now I take so many photos of everything. So whenever I feel down, I just sit and I look back and I think, man, I've lived a pretty fucking cool life.
Right.
Because everybody does get down sometimes. That's fine, but it's a matter of just trying to make it happen less and less often and
Yeah.
less and less severe, and just generally trying to stay positive and stay happy and stay focused. And again, I said like I'm so much better than I used to be. That's how I sum it up.
And how much do you look at, like, do you have a vision of your life, or are you just literally living it as it happens? Or like, do you
I
have a sense of what you're going to be or do on this planet and all that
I
kind of thing?
usually have about 10 back burner ideas,
Right.
and then when I have a killer opportunity for one of them, I take it. So if you asked me a year ago what I'd be doing right now, like I was planning on going to school in Hawaii, but then I was like, well, I'm about to turn too old to get this visa in Australia, and if I want to get another one in New Zealand, for a year after that, so that's what
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do, because you got to strike when the iron's hot. It's now or never, shit or get off the pot sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got quite a few different ideas around, but I know it certainly involves, trying to live simply,
Mm.
and, staying sober and staying vegan and trying to stay, fit, mentally, but also physically.
Yeah. So how do you personally then feel about, considering where you sit compared to, say, a lot of humanity, which is not
Mhm.
having this conversation in the main? How do you feel about being on a planet? Like, well, what is life to you, I guess? Like, because, it's real. You're here, you exist, you're thinking, you're aware. You're on a planet where you've woken up to the fact that most human beings are on a fairly destructive pathway and taking it out on something other than themselves as much as they do on themselves, but something else will always wear, you know what I mean? Our own internal discomfort, whether it be animals or whatever, or a partner or a pet dog or so, I lost my thought there. What did I just say?
It was, what do
This,
I think about, I guess, other people or the way that the regular world works?
yeah, how are you feeling in the midst of it all? You know what I
What
mean?
it is.
Like what is it for you? Like, I certainly have my feelings about it, and I think a lot of people, would have, because often the more aware people become, the more depressing it can get. Because it's like, really, humans are that stuffed up, and like, what is it? How are you coping with it? What is it for you?
Well,
How do you see it all?
so a few years ago, and this was right when I was really going through a whole lot, but I was in yoga school, yoga teacher training. And in that, I was doing a lot of reading on Eastern philosophy.
Yeah,
You read the Bhagavad Gita a lot and a lot of stuff into Buddhism. And I'm a lifelong atheist. I still am. I always have been.
yeah,
Um, but my mentality in general, I think, changed a lot. Where I used to have the idea of, let's say, all religion is inherently stupid, and if you believe it, you're a fucking idiot, whatever. And now I think my view on it is just, if you're not causing any harm upon anybody else, I don't care what you do,
yeah,
you know. And if you can learn some lessons, from reading, the Torah or the Quran or, the Bhagavad Gita or whatever, that's great. I would rather hang out with a fundamentalist Christian who's, feeding the homeless and trying to live Christ-like than an atheist who's an asshole that I happen to agree with, because ultimately I don't, I guess it's just not that important to me. But ultimately, that was really when I started learning the idea of just accepting the things that I can't control, the things
yeah,
that I can't change. Suffering comes from an attachment, to the results of your actions.
yeah.
That's like one of the fundamental ideas behind Buddhism. So you just have to do what you're supposed to do here and just accept that that's all you can do. And then
Mm,
everything beyond that, like there's absolutely no positive is going to come from stressing out about shit that you cannot control.
yeah, yeah.
And
No, I
that has
agree.
made my life so much better. And the other thing I started doing too is I just started accepting, well, I started forgiving everyone for everything. It just makes life that much easier. Holding on to hatred and animosity. I got some problems with some friends and especially with family and whatnot. And like, we are strangely functional now for how much fucked up shit, I'd gone through
Yeah,
years ago. And it just, I was holding these grudges thinking that, that made me strong or something to have this
mm,
anger and
yeah,
hatred and animosity. And that's just not the case. Like it takes a way stronger person to accept things for what they are and to
mm,
just, say, you know, you fucked up. That's fine. It is what it is. So I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
My view on the world has gotten way, way more relaxed in the last few years on just accepting that, there's just shit I can't control.
Mm.
And I'm going to do the best I can to make a positive example out of all the things that I can control.
Yeah,
But, just got to accept the stuff that I can't.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. But, because I think it's a tough one though. Like it's not an easy one. The way the human brain is built, we're so built to want to control everything, and part of control is, we see something you don't like, and we want to do something about it, which is fine. There is a point to where we do need to do something about what we see. But one of the keys is to not resist the truth, because most of the suffering comes from the resistance
Yeah.
rather than actually sitting in it. And it's that, we tend to, we put the truth up here and then we sort of sit here looking at it and we get really disturbed about it. But it's quite interesting when you step right into it, how it takes away a lot of that disturbance. It doesn't mean what you're stepping into is nice. Like, to step into the truth of life on planet Earth it's not a pretty picture. And what humans are doing is really quite disgusting. And, if we are peaceful creatures from another planet came down here and watched our behavior, I'm sure they would hike it straight out of here and think that's one messed up planet down there.
Mm.
But I feel very similar to you that the more I step into just saying, well, that's what it is, the more peaceful I can become. If I resist it and wish it wasn't that way, then of course that just causes me inner turmoil and disturbance, and then I'll get frustrated and angry. And when you're angry, you can't project as much truth. You can't give as much love. Everything goes, to shit basically.
Yeah.
And then you're more inclined to want to pull out that alcohol and have a drink to try and calm yourself down. Even like good people doing good things in the world, will try and do things to try and cope with their own resistance to the truth of life. But I think that is a challenging one for people to learn. Like, what do you think? That's just innately something that came to you, or was there a key in that? All right, here we go. What's this? It's not.
This is my 3-year AA chip, and I don't really get super involved in AA. I'll
Yeah.
go on my birthday, but it's what's called the Serenity Prayer, which basically just says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, change the, or the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Mm.
And again, I'm not a religious guy, but I think that that is a, regardless of your religious ideology, that is a phenomenal
Mm.
thing. To just have the wisdom to know the difference,
Yeah.
and
So
change.
do you find then so is that wisdom that's leading you to doing what you do? Like meaning that the world needs help and I'm going to help kind of thing. It's just a matter of fact. And
Um, I don't know if that makes me wise. I think I don't know what else I would do. I don't know.
mm,
I can't. Well, whatever. It just keeps, to me, it all comes down to just various philosophical books and punk rock lyrics, which are my own kind of philosophy. But
yeah.
so in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Are you familiar with the Bhagavad Gita?
The what? Sorry.
The Bhagavad Gita. It's like the
No, I don't know
foundation
it. No.
of Hare Krishna and
Yeah.
Hinduism and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there's this character Arjuna who's this great warrior, right? And then God or Krishna essentially comes to him right before his battle, and and just basically explains, like, I'm all powerful, I control everything. And Arjuna's like, well, if you are all powerful and everything, then why does it even matter if I go into this battle? And what Krishna says to Arjuna is, with or without you, the men in these facing armies will die. Therefore, stand up, conquer, win glory. I've already struck them down. You are just my instrument. And I think that's kind of the idea. It's that
Yeah.
we have destiny, and there's so much shit that we have no control over. But if you have a cause and you have a destiny, then you have to do that to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
He said, I've already struck them down. You're just my instrument. And I don't think that I'm Krishna's instrument, but metaphorically, sure. Like, I will try to be the instrument of the world to try to promote some
So you're
positivity.
happy to be an instrument of sharing truth and wisdom, basically, as
Positive.
much as you can, or in whatever way you can.
Keep that positive mental attitude, man.
Yeah.
PMA.
So is there anything in particular that you could say, like, because there's a lot of young people that I think, are pretty confused about the world at the moment, and not that I think things were ever good, but right now, of course, young people seem to have less respect for leaders because our leaders are worse than they've ever been. From my personal observations, it's all over the place, and they're completely missing the topics of the day, and so they don't know where to turn. Whether it be at schools still trying to make out that everything's fine on planet Earth. Universities are still trying to make out everything's fine. So all the traditional systems in place, are still blind and talking absolute rubbish in the main. And so for young people, what I'm saying is that like, what is this world? What do we do anymore? Like, what would be your advice to them? Other than what you being an inspiration as an individual, the way you've gone about it, would there be a general sense of advice though that you could give to young people?
Yeah, find a sense of community.
Yeah,
That's it. Like, that's what's going to keep you happy. It's not going to be acquisition of wealth, or it's not going to be whatever flashy shit in the long term. Like, what's going to matter is having meaningful experiences,
mm.
with good people, having solid relationships, and having a good relationship with yourself. And I mean, for me, it definitely comes down to having a sense of community. For me, it was within the punk rock world. I was always just kind of like a weird loner or whatever sort of guy, and then started playing music, and I was about 14, 15. And then, I mean, a lot of those people are still some of my best friends. I think that's the key, is, finding a community, and preferably, something positive. I mean, you can find community in white supremacy, but I don't advocate that by any means. Like, there are more
Yeah.
constructive ways to do it, but there's, whatever you're into, you can find some other people, who are trying to roughly go for that same sort of thing, and I think, the big idea too is to surround yourself by people that you admire and that you want to be like, that you want to learn from.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, obviously connecting is one of the huge keys, and I think that's what's lacking on the planet. I mean, like social media, unfortunately, gives an illusion of connecting, but we're not really connecting in a deep and real way. In terms of communication, I mean, one of the things we just don't learn is how to communicate and share our emotions and basic stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's especially, with men in Western society. You do see a lot of that, where it's, so frowned upon to be emotionally open, or to show any sort of, it's, oh, you're a man, you're only supposed to like meat, pussy, and sports or something, and and it's terrible because that's damaging, us a lot,
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's limiting our potential. It's not bringing out
Absolutely.
whatever's best in us, obviously, and that kind of thing. So just for interest, as you were talking then, I had this image of the younger you know, the one that was messed up and drinking alcohol and hiding from life. If
Right.
if you were sitting there and then this you came along and
Mhm.
spoke to him, do you think he would have listened?
Um, Maybe. I don't know. I think that way before I did anything, I had some ideas kicking around. And I think
Mm,
that that's true with, with almost anybody. Like there's some ideas kicking around, and at a certain point there's just a tipping point. And
yeah.
you don't know what that tipping point is going to be. So it's say, with I don't know, with veganism or something like, it wasn't an overnight process for me. I had a veggie burger at a buddy's house when I was 16, and then months later, I've been listening to Goldfinger, Propaganda, sing about animal rights, and over time, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm vegetarian. It took me 7 years, and finally, I went vegan. But over that time, it's just things add up, and things add up, and things add up. So I don't know. I mean, I could probably talk a little bit of sense into the dude, but um,
Well,
you
because
know, you,
the reason I'm asking is because I mean that's the truth of where a lot of young people are at. You know, they are lost in alcohol and drugs and doing stupid shit and being irresponsible and somehow thinking that that's I don't know. You can see it. Like I go out and I see young kids and you can see they have this sort of attitude about them as if somehow they're doing something with that attitude or that like they're proving something that's going to make them feel better, which obviously they're not. They're just on a
right.
self-destructive pathway.
Self-destruction is so romantic.
So yeah, it is. That's right. It feels like that when you're young anyway. Until you have to live with the end result of it as an adult, then suddenly it's not so
Right.
romantic anymore. But like what is it that these I guess when we're talking, we can't just talk from where we're at now. We've got to talk to where people are at. So what is that key? Like, how would someone have got through to you at that age? I know you were a thinker anyway, but maybe
Yeah.
not everyone is naturally pushing it forward that much in their mind, and they need that like why would young people go down this pathway of perhaps giving up the life that all their friends are living to step down a life where you give up, which is not about things anymore, and it's more about you're giving up your McDonald's and your Hungry Jacks and not eating animals and putting effort into helping and connecting. What's going to take a young person to find that something to do? Why would they give up on their self-destructive but addictive lifestyle to the stuff that society is making so easy for them to have
And making a lot of money off of that
and making
process
a lot of
too.
money, yes, including the
Um,
governments.
I don't know. It's tricky. All I know is that I'm going to try to live my life as positively as possible, and then
Yeah,
hopefully somebody will think, hey, maybe that dude's onto something, and that's all I can really do.
yeah,
I can't just fucking shake 15-year-old me and say, get your shit together, you little shit. Like that's not going to happen. I can't get the equivalency of 15-year-old me and do the same thing there. That's just not going to work. But
no,
I can try to. Let's say I have a couple of nieces, and that's like I take my role very seriously as the liberal bachelor uncle. So like when I'm back in town, it's like we're going to the food co-op, we're going to the art gallery, we're going to Detroit Red Wings game or whatever.
yeah,
We're going to listen to punk rock, like just really, I try to expand their minds, but that's, I mean, it is. Maybe it'll take, maybe it doesn't. They
yeah,
seem to be a couple of pretty cool little ladies for being, so young, but
yeah,
that's all you can do is just really try to lead some sort of example and do
mm,
something positive,
mm,
and hopefully somebody will think, hey, maybe he's onto something.
yeah. Yeah, look in the simplicity of it, that is what's required. I mean, expanding our minds is the key, and that's just the facts. We haven't expanded them enough, and yet we have such an ability to. Like to me, what could make it exciting is if we can really get on a flow with this and get more people talking and thinking, and then young people will see this is exciting. You know what I mean? It's not all miserable and depressing. It looks like that at the moment because it's
Yeah,
so contrary to the main flow of life. But I think if we can shift that flow, you know what I mean? Get out of that sick river that's leading really to nothing but some pit of sludgy hell,
yeah,
and step onto this other one that's opening up doors of possibilities. But you got to forget that the biggest thing I see, Dallas, is you got to young kids sort of they're so miserable they become so outcome focused that they need to know what they're going to get, and that leads to control, and that leads to all the stuff we see. But somehow I think you got to live your life to do this expansive journey. You have to let go of necessarily, I don't know, which is in line with what you were saying earlier. You can't be so obsessed about what's going to work and what's not, who's going to listen, who's not going to listen. You know what I mean? You just got to live your life and see what happens.
It's like to say, don't take life too seriously, or you'll never make it out alive.
That's right.
Spot on. Like, it is what it is, man. Just make the most of it.
Yeah. So when you're talking like to family members and things like that, how do they feel about the journey you're on and what you're doing with your life?
Overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
My mom has been vegan for years now, which is
what?
great.
Sorry.
My mom has been vegan for years now,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is,
Yeah.
because her mom died of colon cancer. Her dad was diabetic and died of cancer. Her sister's diabetic. Like is surrounded by that. So yeah, so she's my biggest supporter for sure, and so that's pretty cool. Even I go to my grandparents' house, and like we had a vegan potluck there, not that long ago, which is, and everybody else drinks, and that's fine, and
Yeah.
whatever. I'm just not going to, and everybody besides my mom, they're all omnivores, but in general, I understand that I'm not going to be able to do everything. But every time, that I don't know, just from trying to expand it out a little bit, it's awesome. There's something really positive on that. I remember like I was at my dad's cousin's wedding a couple of years ago, and it's his wedding. There's a lot of people there to see and talk to and whatnot. I went through the buffet line, and there were some carrots, and I was sitting there, I was eating some carrots, and he walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, got those carrots from the farmer's market." Like he specifically seeked me out at his wedding to point out that he locally sourced his carrots,
Nice.
that's awesome, because he knows that that's something that's really important to me is, environmentalism. And I'm a big, veggie advocate. Now his daughter is maybe 10 or something and just went vegetarian. So, obviously I'm like, I'm not a real preachy dude as far as people that don't want to hear it, but they all know that if they have any questions about this, call me. I'm the guy to talk to, and that's really the idea. People have overwhelmingly been pretty supportive because it's, they see how much better my life seems than how it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I was temporarily having a blast when I'm too drunk to walk or whatever, but like, my hypertension's gone. My blood pressure, it's perfect. I can do I don't know. I did triathlon. I went through yoga school. I started playing Aussie rules football. Like I'm, all these things that nobody expected me to be able to walk a fucking straight line, So it's pretty impressive, if I can do, 80 minutes of sprinting and tackling a bunch of Australian dudes, or do a try or do these long runs or, do a million pull-ups or, put on, I'm actually, I weigh more now than I did during my drinking weight.
Yeah,
I lost about 15 kilograms or whatever. I just got really into yoga and running, and then I put on another 15 kilograms of muscle now, and it's like,
yeah, good.
They can't say shit. Nobody can give me the protein argument because I will do more push-ups than any of them, like it's pretty awesome. But yeah, generally, I don't know. I feel very fortunate that I think a lot of it, it's where I come from in the Midwest that none of us grew up with anything, like it's not a flashy place. I never starved. Like, we definitely had food stamps, but we didn't starve. But but we've got each other, and it's very, very tightly knit. And I think that, when you have people that come from these kind of rougher places, like that, they have a sense of community because that's, you can't fill, you can't fill it with extravagant whatever because we don't have extravagant anything,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I've been very fortunate that my family have been really cool and supportive.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is great. And I mean, look, you can't take out your contribution to that, obviously, because I'm sure they wouldn't have been supportive of you continuing down a destructive lifestyle. So that's, I think we got to take charge of our lives, like not in a controlling way, but we've got to realize so much of what we get back is going to be affected by, what we give. We've become a real victim mentality in society. You can feel it everywhere. Everyone's like a victim. Everyone's like someone else is to blame, rather than just, work it out for yourself. Face the truth like you've done. The world's never going to be exactly the way you want it to be. No one's ever going to think exactly like how you'd like them to think. But you can grow and you can become, whatever it is that lives inside you can be freed. And because I think the essence of who we are is pretty solid, and I don't think life can take that away from us. but we develop a construct of thought around us that can, really limit our existence. And I think once we remove all those personally developed constraints, and then we can actually get on with life for real. So for you, Dallas, like this peaceful approach that you're sort of like putting forward, is this become natural and organic for you now, or do you still have to work at it? Like where are you sitting now? Like okay, so I'm talking to you now, but if the cameras followed you around for the day, are we still going to see you have moments where you're just frustrated and angry and like what's life like for you? Because obviously it's fine for us to sit here and talk about it, but I'm sure if people saw my life on a personal level, sometimes I think, holy shit, David's, sometimes he's wise and calm, and other times he looks like a pissed off, frustrated man, and it has a lot of emotional variation in there. What's it like for you now?
It just gets, again, like nobody's perfect, but it's certainly the overall trend is improving every day.
Yeah, right.
And I'm content with that. I'm glad that I'm moving in the correct direction. Sometimes you do get flustered for some stuff, but generally it's just the idea of trying to be thankful and appreciative, and just keep working towards the end goal, which is just truly being happy.
Yeah. So are you completely free of all mind-altering substances, whether it be anything whatsoever?
I'm a straight edge. Straight edge would be the term, which really comes from the punk rock scene in the '80s.
Right.
Just that kind of rejection of that whole drug culture. So yeah, I haven't touched alcohol in over 3 years. There's no smokes, no weed, no coke, none of that shit. Just I drink smoothies and water.
Like, how different do you feel? Like in your head, is it just sharper, clearer? Like what?
A sober mind is it's a powerful weapon, and it's tricky. When I first got sober, getting sober wasn't the hard part. It was dealing with all the shit I had been drinking away since I was a teenager.
Right.
Was very difficult. So when I learned how to control that a lot better, then I started feeling phenomenal. Because at first, when I first got sober, that was when I hit the worst depression that I've ever had in my life, and wound up, being 27 years old, not being allowed to have shoelaces or my own custody, while I'm in a psychiatric hospital. It's terrifying to think that, I was a baby and had shoelaces.
Yeah.
You don't even think about it, it's shit that you don't think about until you're not allowed to have that. And you think, I'm a grown ass man and I can't have shoelaces that babies can have. But you get a lot of time to think, and then I guess that can work out really well or can work really poorly. For me, it seemed to work out pretty well in the long run of, just getting much more comfortable with myself and just learning how to, I feel that, addiction, it's you're living on borrowed time. It's not a sustainable thing. Yeah, I might be happy if I'm too fucked up to stand, but that's that can't last. Like, it's just inevitable that eventually that is going to bite you in the ass.
Well, you could apply that to all of society, couldn't you? You know what I mean? Like, we're all living addictive lifestyles and sucking the life out of it, to feed some sort of insatiable illness in us. And, this journey we're on as a species, I think, like at the moment, just like an individual can't last, neither can we collectively. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whether it's someone on drugs or someone's addicted to meat or addicted to pharmaceutical medications or whatever the case may be, or addicted to technology. Hey?
I just tried to get addicted towards better things,
Yes. Well, hopefully not addicted to anything, but
I'm a workout freak now. It's like I love going to the gym. Like, I'm addicted to smoothies. It's again, for me, everything always comes back to some lyrics. They say, "Get out of bed, get fucking dressed, and find better ways to get busy."
Yeah, nice.
That's Iron Sheik, good man.
So how do you cope then, like putting yourself out publicly? Because I know a lot of people I speak to say that they'd like to do more or, talk on YouTube or whatever. How have you dealt with the exposing of oneself? Are you all cool with that? Did you ever have an issue with that? Did it come naturally for you to be more of a public figure, with who you are as a person?
And I always have been.
What's that?
I said, I'm an open book, and I always have been.
Right.
So that was very easy for me. It's not, like I had no problem. I remember, some things that I think would be really embarrassing, and they shouldn't have to be embarrassing, but let's say I remember on Facebook, So I have the Vegan Fitness Punk page. And I started that like right when I was really dealing with like the worst of, my depression. And I remember just like putting up a picture of my ID badge from a psychiatric hospital and saying, I'm, going to go make things better in my life.
Mm.
And I was excited because I think I had so many people, contact me, and I still have for years. Like every day I get somebody contacting me, it's something. I'm just saying, like that resonates with them, or that that they're like I've been there too.
Mm.
And it's a lot of times it's people that I wouldn't even suspect anything because they keep it inside and they keep that a little hidden, and that's because I think some people are just more private, and that's fine.
Mm.
But I mean, everybody's fighting some sort of battles. Everybody's got some sort of struggles and shit.
That's
And
right.
I personally find that my healing of myself is done a lot better from sharing all of these experiences and being open about it.
Right.
And I think it's a rising tides raise all ships situation where, I can resonate with some other people, but in turn that helps me feel better about myself and my own experiences.
Mm.
Trying to make a positive out of something that's pretty fucking negative.
Do you ever get negative feedback from people?
Yeah, sometimes, but
What do you do with that? Just like let it straight through, or
fuck it, dude. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, you can't please everyone. Like, that's fine.
yeah,
And I figure, even with something like, there was a lot of people that got sick of like hearing whatever my shit is, and that's fine. Like,
mm.
just anyone who matters doesn't mind, and anyone who minds doesn't matter.
right, yeah,
Another one-liner. I'll be
yeah.
here all
You should write. You should put a book together of all your favorite quotes.
day. Favorite one-liners from the various dumb '90s comedies and punk rock songs.
yeah,
Not a terrible idea.
no, no, or some good T-shirts maybe.
Yeah.
So what do you do? So what's most of your time? Is this like what we're talking about? Is this effectively your life now? Like, have you turned it into a life as such? You know what I mean? That you can sustain, or is it like you never really know where the next day is coming, or have you got something solid that keeps you going? And because that's another thing I hear from young people. They'd like to step into doing more with their life, but they're scared of giving up the security because they don't know how they're going to survive,
I
or
don't know
that kind of
security.
thing.
That's fine. Um, I mean, there's a few things I do, but generally, like I've just been on tour all summer, and now it's just kind of like I'm working on building a life here in Melbourne. I just got here, less than 2 weeks ago or something. And I was in New Zealand for 5 of those days. So ultimately, I've been here for like 9 days. So I'm gonna do some pretty basic things. I'm gonna get a job, and I only work at vegan restaurants. That's my thing. Is I run front of house for vegan restaurants when
Yeah.
I'm not on tour, and try to do these talks as much as possible. And I write for Vegan Health and Fitness magazine, but um, I don't know. It's all just trying to stay. I know that I can make way more money bartending, but I'm not going to because
Mm.
it's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
It's like just trying to. Yeah, I understand that the world is not catered towards me and towards my ideas, so I try to do the best that I possibly can to live a life that's still functional within this world while still being in line with my ethics.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Look, that's not. In some ways, that's not. It appears not as something that's easy to do. It can almost look impossible because it looks like if you focus too much on what everyone else is doing, then I think that puts you off. I find one of the keys is to just not focus on everyone else, to see it.
Yeah.
You don't want to put your head in the sand and be in denial. You've got to face the truth of it. Obviously, that's what we're here to do, or we're never going to wake up. But one of the keys that keeps me sane, and I can see helps other people, is just to not focus on everyone else so much, and
Yeah.
just be what you can be, and create what you can, and give as much as you can, and like you said, just live with the truth of who you are, and if that integrity is part of who you are, then of course you just create a life that allows you to be that and do that, which I think is essential. Well, Dallas, look, on that note, I think, that was really great. And I think you are an inspiration. And I think, people like you should speak out more, because I think one of the things in the world, people feel really alone and they don't realize how many people are out there that maybe think like you think. And unless people get out and do what you're doing, then they're never going to know. And hopefully it's a source of inspiration for other young people to sort their lives out and step into the truth, and that drugs and alcohol may be appealing, but they're not the pathway to anything but destruction ultimately.
Just you're living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you're actually coming to the Adelaide Vegan Festival, is that right?
Yeah, I will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
there
You're going to
early
be there, yeah.
November. I'll be giving a talk, which should be good.
Yep.
I've never been to Adelaide, but I'm pretty stoked for it. Seems like a pretty awesome festival, and
All
been
right.
to talk to them for quite some time. And I mean, they're promoting the hell out of it, which is great. And it looks like they got a really good team behind them to, really
Yep.
make full production out of it.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, I like going to towns like I was just in Christchurch, and I really dug that. And I think Adelaide might be a similar sort of thing because it's kind of like where I come from. It's not New York or LA. It's like it's the place that I don't know, it gets overlooked. People don't give a shit. And as a
Mm.
result, we got something to prove, and I hope that that's what Adelaide is doing, is thinking, we're not whatever sort of bumpkins or whatever shit, people are like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to Australia. I went to Sydney Harbor. And they don't realize that there's an entire continent here, there are these other places.
Yeah.
And usually my favorite places are those places that, I as an American, might not know about. And I just get my mind blown because, there's some real people doing some really positive things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, good. Look, and look, we had chats like, I had some chats with the organizers as well, like early on in the year, and I said, let's. My input was to say, let's inject a bit more life into it. Let's bring it together a bit more. Let's empower ourselves and go beyond the obvious and see if we can just start making this more dynamic and more real. And I'm glad you're coming because you got a real straight talk. You know what I mean? You don't bullshit. You don't fluffy it around with normal social parameters. And I think, and the fact you're a man with integrity, well, then you can trust that. It doesn't matter what, you know what I mean? You don't have to say the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
thing because you're talking from a good place. And I think that's an inspiring thing for people just to learn to feel relaxed and just to talk up because because everyone's too worried about strategizing what they should say or how they should say it. And
Right.
I think you just got to be true to you and speak, if you know what I mean, which is exactly what I see you doing. And I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
It's a good thing. All right, Dallas. Well, look, I look forward to hopefully we'll
Can
cross.
I do a closing note or two? Can I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
like to
yeah.
close?
Go.
Okay, one, got my sweet Adelaide Crows tattoos here,
Right.
so I'm good to go. I played USAFL for the Austin Crows, who are the Adelaide affiliates in Austin, Texas.
Yeah,
So I just started playing footy this year. So I'm pretty stoked to go there because that's our home team.
yeah.
Number two, Freely the Banana Girl.
Oh
What's up,
yeah.
girl? Yeah, she's. I guess she's single now. You want to like hang out or something? Yeah, we could like eat fruit. I mean, dinner's on me. I'll pay for 50 bananas.
Nice. You slipped that one in. That's nice offer.
Had to.
50
Yeah.
bananas for.
So if everybody knows Freely, make sure she sees this. Like, I'll try to take her on a date.
Beautiful. All right,
All right.
we'll see what we can do for you to help you out there.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, Dallas. Well, look, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and keep doing whatever you're doing. It sounds pretty good to me, and you're representing what we all need to do, just to relax, speak up, and get on with life,
Cool.
which is excellent. All right, thank you once again, and see you soon in Adelaide. Peace. See ya.